I should have known my fairy tale wedding would end in disaster when my father-in-law grabbed the microphone during our reception. The crystal chandeliers of the grand ballroom suddenly felt more like spotlights, and 200 pairs of eyes turned to watch my world implode. My name is Isabella, and less than an hour ago, I had become Mrs. Patterson, in what should have been the happiest moment of my life. Now I stood frozen beside my new husband, Dawson, as his father Corey's voice boomed through the speakers. "I've watched my son make many mistakes in his life," he began, swirling his champagne glass. "But this is by far his biggest one yet." The room fell silent. My mother Maria half rose from her seat, but I subtly shook my head. This was my battle to fight. "A girl from the wrong side of the tracks," Corey continued, his words slicing through the air like daggers, "who somehow managed to convince my son she was worthy of the Patterson name. Tell me, Isabella, how does a secretary's daughter think she can possibly fit into our world?" I felt Dawson tense beside me but remained silent. His hand, which had been holding mine under the table, slowly withdrew. The gesture hurt more than his father's words ever could. "Corey," Prudence, my mother-in-law, hissed from their table, "that's enough." But he wasn't finished. "I've built this family's legacy from the ground up. Everything we have, the company, our reputation, our standing in society, I've earned it. And now you think you can just waltz in and—" "Actually," I interrupted, my voice steady despite my racing heart, "I believe I can." I stood up, smoothing my white designer gown. "And I think you might want to check your phone, Corey. There's something you should see." His phone buzzed right on cue. I watched as he pulled it out, his face turning from smug superiority to confusion, then shock. This is impossible," he stammered, looking up at me. "The Morrison deal? How did you know about it?" I smiled, though inside I was trembling. "Or do you mean how did I make it happen? Because yes, that merger you've been chasing for months, the one that's going to save your company's fourth quarter, you're welcome." Gasps rippled through the crowd. My best friend Peyton shot me a subtle thumbs up from her table. Even Elliot, Dawson's usually smug cousin, looked impressed. "You're bluffing," Corey sputtered, but his hands were shaking now. "Am I?" I took a step forward. "Should we call James Morrison right now? I'm sure he'd love to tell you about our lunch last week. Or maybe we should discuss how I orchestrated the entire negotiation through a shell company while working as a mere secretary in your acquisitions department." Dawson finally found his voice. "Isabella, what are you talking about?" I turned to my husband, seeing the confusion in his eyes. "I'm talking about proving my worth, darling, something your father seems to think I need to do." Corey's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "This is preposterous. Security. Escort her." "I wouldn't," I cut him off, "unless you want the Morrison deal to disappear as quickly as it materialized. You see, nothing's been signed yet. One word from me." The threat hung in the air. Prudence was now gripping Corey's arm, whispering furiously in his ear. The ballroom had erupted into hushed conversations, phones were being pulled out, and I could practically hear the society gossip machine whirring to life. "You've underestimated me, Corey," I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. "And that was your first mistake. But don't worry, I'm just getting started." I turned to leave, pausing only to address our guests. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate our special day. Unfortunately, it seems the party's over." As I walked toward the exit, head held high, I heard Dawson call after me, "Isabella, wait!" But I didn't stop. I couldn't. Because if I did, everyone would see the tears threatening to spill from my eyes. They'd see how much it hurt that my husband had sat there in silence while his father tried to humiliate me. They'd see that beneath my confident exterior, I was screaming. Instead, I pushed through the ornate doors, my heels clicking against the marble floor. Peyton appeared beside me, already holding my clutch and car keys. "That," she whispered, "was the most badass thing I've ever seen." I managed a small smile. "Trust me, it's only the beginning. They want to see if I'm worthy of the Patterson name? Fine. I'll show them exactly who they're dealing with." As we walked out into the warm evening air, I could still hear the chaos erupting behind us. My wedding day might have been ruined, but I had something better now: leverage. And I intended to use every bit of it. You did what? Peyton nearly spilled her coffee across my kitchen counter the next morning. I'd finally told her the full story behind the Morrison deal, and her eyes were as wide as saucers. Keep your voice down, I whispered, though we were alone in my penthouse apartment. Old habits die hard. Yes, I orchestrated the entire merger through a series of shell companies. I've been planning this for months. But how? I mean, you were just a secretary? I raised an eyebrow. That's exactly why it worked. Nobody pays attention to the secretary taking notes in the corner. Nobody questions when she stays late to organize files. And nobody notices when she's quietly building relationships with every key player in the industry. My phone buzzed again, the 15th call from Dawson since last night. I silenced it. You're not going to talk to him? Peyton asked. Not until he decides whose side he's on. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city skyline. Besides, I'm expecting a more important call. Right on cue, my business line rang. I put it on speaker. Isabella speaking. This is James Morrison. His gravelly voice filled the room. I just had a very interesting conversation with Corey Patterson. He seems to think I've been negotiating with you. That's correct, James, though technically you've been negotiating with Aurora Ventures. I smiled. My company. There was a pause. Well, I'll be damned. You're telling me that brilliant restructuring proposal came from you, not some fancy consulting firm? Every word. And the profit projections I showed you? They're conservative. I can do even better. You've got balls, kid. I like that. He chuckled. But why reveal yourself now? Let's just say my father-in-law needed a wake-up call. The question is, are you still in? Depends. Are you still offering that 30% cost reduction in the first year? Make it 35, I countered. But I want a seat on the board. Peyton's jaw dropped. She mouthed holy shit at me. Done, James said without hesitation. Send over the paperwork. And Isabella? Give Corey hell for me. That smug bastard's had it coming for years. After hanging up, I turned to Peyton. And that's how you turn the tables. I can't believe you've been planning this since... She was interrupted by loud knocking at my door. Isabella, open up! It was Dawson. I nodded to Peyton, who squeezed my hand before slipping out through the service entrance, our pre-arranged exit strategy. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. Dawson looked terrible. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his tie loose. Where have you been? I've been calling all night. Oh, now you want to talk? I stepped aside to let him in. Funny, you were pretty quiet at the wedding. What was I supposed to do? He's my father. And I'm your wife. The words exploded out of me. Or did you forget that part when you let him humiliate me in front of everyone we know? I didn't know. He ran his hands through his hair. About Morrison. About Aurora Ventures. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? Or would you have run straight to Daddy with the information? His silence was answer enough. The board meeting is in 2 hours, I said, checking my watch. Your father's probably already there, trying to damage control. You should go. Isabella, please, we can fix this. Fix what exactly? The fact that your father thinks I'm trash? Or the fact that you didn't defend me? I walked to my closet and pulled out a designer suit. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get ready. I have my own meeting to attend. What meeting? The one where I signed the Morrison deal. I smiled sweetly. Oh, and Dawson. You might want to warn your father. James is giving me a board seat. He staggered back like I'd slapped him. You can't do this. I already have. The question is, what are you going to do about it? As if on cue, his phone rang. Looking at the screen, he hesitated. Go ahead, I said. Answer it. We both know it's your father. He took the call, turning away from me. Yes, father. I'm with her now. No, she won't. Yes, I understand, but I walked into my bedroom to change, leaving him to his stammered explanations. In the mirror, I saw a woman I barely recognized, stronger, fiercer, ready for war. My mother's words echoed in my head. Never let them see you sweat, baby, even if you're breaking inside. When I emerged, Dawson was gone. In his place was a text message. "Please don't do this, you'll destroy everything." I typed back, "No, darling, I'm just getting started." Grabbing my briefcase, I headed for the door. The Morrison contract was inside, along with enough documentation to prove every backroom deal and questionable transaction the Patterson empire had made in the last 5 years. Corey wanted to play dirty. Fine. But he was about to learn that this secretary's daughter had been taking notes on a lot more than just meeting minutes. The Patterson corporate boardroom fell silent as I walked in, heels clicking against the polished marble floor. Corey sat at the head of the table, face red with barely contained rage. Prudence stood by the window, arms crossed, and there was Elliot, Dawson's cousin, watching me with newfound interest. "You're not welcome here," Corey spat. I placed my briefcase on the table. "Actually, I am." James Morrison's proxy letter. I slid the document across the gleaming surface. "He's given me full authority to negotiate on his behalf." Elliot picked up the letter, eyebrows rising. "It's legitimate." "This is absurd," Prudence stepped forward. "You can't possibly think—" "Think what?" I interrupted. "That a secretary could be smart enough to orchestrate a multi-million-dollar merger? Or that a woman from the wrong side of the tracks could outmaneuver the great Corey?" The door opened and Dawson walked in, looking between his father and me. He took a seat halfway between us, still playing both sides. "Let's talk numbers," I said, opening my laptop. "The Morrison merger will save this company $20 million in the first quarter alone. Without it, you're looking at a 15% drop in stock value by end of month." "Those numbers are confidential," Corey growled. "How did you access them?" I smiled. Amazing what people leave lying around their desks when they think the cleaning crew is coming through. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. "Stay strong, baby. Show them what you're made of." Elliot leaned forward. "Perhaps we should listen to what Isabella has to say." "You too?" Corey turned on him. "She's trying to destroy this family." "No," I corrected. "I'm trying to save your company. The fact that it hurts your pride is just a bonus." Dawson finally spoke. "Isabella, please, can we discuss this privately? Like we discussed things at the wedding." I kept my eyes on Corey. "The Morrison deal closes today, with or without Patterson Corp's involvement. Your choice." "You're bluffing," Prudence said. I pulled out my phone, dialed, and put it on speaker. "James, you're on with the Patterson board." "Isabella. Just reviewing the final paperwork now. Brilliant stuff, as usual. When can we announce?" Corey's face went from red to purple. "James, whatever she's promised you—" "Save it, Corey," James cut in. "I've wanted to work with someone like Isabella for years. Someone who sees the big picture. Someone who isn't afraid to take risks. Unlike some people I know." The implications hung heavy in the air. I watched as the board members exchanged glances. 3 o'clock, I said. "That's your deadline. Accept the deal with me on the board, or I take Morrison's business elsewhere." I stood up, gathering my things. "Oh, and Corey, you might want to check your email. There's some interesting information about certain offshore accounts that the SEC might find fascinating." Elliot's eyes widened. Prudence gasped. Dawson looked sick. "You wouldn't dare," Corey whispered. "Try me." I headed for the door, then paused. "By the way, I'm having dinner with my mother tonight. You remember her, the secretary you looked down on for 20 years? She sends her regards." In the hallway, Elliot caught up with me. "That was impressive." "Save it," I said. "I know you're just looking for an angle." He grinned. "Can't blame a guy for trying. But seriously, if you're looking for allies, I know where all the bodies are buried. Metaphorically speaking, of course. I'll think about it." My phone rang. Peyton. "Girl, you need to see this. Turn on CNBC." I pulled out my tablet, pulling up the financial news. The headline made me smile. "Morrison Industries in play. Mystery negotiator threatens Patterson dynasty." "They're calling you the corporate Cinderella," Peyton laughed. "How does it feel?" "Like revenge," I admitted. "But also lonely." I looked back at the boardroom, where Dawson was now in heated discussion with his father. He had his chance to choose. He made his decision. And what about your decision? Are you really ready to blow up your marriage for this? Before I could answer, another text came through from Dawson. Meet me at our spot. Please, we need to talk. Our spot. The rooftop garden where he proposed, where I'd first believed in fairy tales. I have to go, I told Peyton. The next move is about to be made. Be careful, she warned. Wounded animals are the most dangerous, and right now, you've got a whole pack of them cornered. I stepped into the elevator, pressing the button for the roof. In the mirrored walls, I checked my reflection. Not a hair out of place, not a sign of weakness. Good, because this next conversation would determine everything. My future, my marriage, and just how far I was willing to go to prove my worth. The elevator doors opened to the garden, and there he was, standing by the roses. My husband. My opponent. My biggest weakness. Game on. The rooftop garden felt different now. The roses that once seemed romantic looked like splashes of blood against the green foliage. Dawson stood with his back to the city skyline, his tie loosened, looking more lost than I'd ever seen him. Remember when you proposed here? I asked, breaking the silence. You said we'd take on the world together. I meant it, he stepped forward. I still do. Really? Because from where I'm standing, you chose your father's side the moment things got difficult. It's not that simple, Isabella. He ran his hands through his hair, a nervous habit I used to find endearing. The company, the family name, everything my father built, would be nothing without this merger, I cut in. Your father's been running the company into the ground for years. Those offshore accounts I mentioned, they're not just tax havens. He's been embezzling. Dawson's face went pale. How do you know this? Like I said, nobody watches the secretary. I moved to the edge of the garden, looking down at the city below. Every late-night meeting, every suspicious transfer, every shredded document, I saw it all. I just waited for the right moment. So this whole time, our relationship was real. I turned to face him. God help me, it was real. I fell in love with you despite my plans, not because of them. His phone buzzed. We both knew who it was. He wants me to convince you to back down, Dawson admitted. Says he'll make you a vice president, give you a seat on the executive committee. I laughed. He's still trying to buy me off? After everything? What do you want, Isabella? Really? I want what I earned. Recognition, respect, and yes, power. I stepped closer to him. But most of all, I wanted you to stand by me, to be the man I thought I married. The rooftop door burst open. Elliot strode out, slightly out of breath. Sorry to interrupt the marital drama, but you need to see this. He thrust his tablet at me. The headline made my blood run cold. Anonymous source questions. Morrison deal ethics. SEC investigation. Possible. My father, Dawson said quietly. He's trying to tank the deal, Elliot explained. Claims there's evidence of insider trading. My phone started ringing. James Morrison. James, I can explain. Save it, he barked. My lawyers are already getting calls. What the hell is going on, Isabella? It's a desperate play, I said, keeping my voice steady. Corey's trying to force my hand. Give me an hour. You've got 30 minutes. After that, I'm taking the deal to their competitors. The line went dead. Elliot whistled low. Well, cousin, he said to Dawson, looks like it's time to pick a side, because this is about to get ugly. Dawson looked between us, torment clear on his face. There has to be another way. There is, I said. Tell your father to back down. Show him the evidence I have. End this now. He'll go to prison. He should have thought of that before he started stealing from his own company. My phone buzzed again. A text from Peyton. Your mother's here. Corey sent people to her house. The world tilted. Your father, I said to Dawson, my voice shaking with rage, just sent men to threaten my mother. He wouldn't. Check your phone. I'm sure he told you all about it. Dawson pulled out his phone, scrolled through messages. The colour drained from his face. I didn't know, he whispered. Isabella, I swear. Save it. I was already heading for the door. Elliot, release the documents to the SEC. All of them. That'll destroy the company, Dawson protested. I turned back one last time. No, it'll destroy your father. The company will survive under new leadership. I looked at Elliot. I assume you're ready to step up? Elliot smiled. Been ready for years. Just needed the right partner. Isabella, please. Dawson reached for me. Don't do this. I pulled away. You had your chance to stop this. Now it's too late. As I reached the door, his voice stopped me. I love you. I love you too, I said without turning around. But love isn't enough anymore. Your father just made this war personal. The elevator ride down felt like descending into battle. I texted Peyton, get my mother somewhere safe. Use the contingency plan. Another text came through, this time from James Morrison. 20 minutes left, make it count. I straightened my spine, checked my reflection in the elevator's mirrored walls. My mother taught me to always face my enemies looking my best. As the doors opened to the lobby, I saw Corey waiting with his security team. Bad move, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Going after my mother, now I'm going to burn it all down. The chess pieces were in place. The final game was about to begin, and this time I wasn't playing to win. I was playing to destroy. Your mother's fine, Corey said, his security team flanking him in the lobby. Consider it a warning shot. Wrong move. I pulled out my phone, dialed a number on speaker. Go ahead, I told the person on the other end. A familiar voice filled the lobby. This is James Morrison. In light of recent developments, I'm announcing that Morrison Industries will be pursuing an exclusive partnership with Aurora Ventures. Effectively. Immediately. Corey's face contorted. You wouldn't dare. Still playing? I pressed another button on my phone. Every screen in the lobby lit up with breaking news alerts. The company's stock was already plummeting. You're destroying everything, he roared, stepping forward. No, I corrected him, standing my ground. You did that yourself. Every illegal transaction, every backroom deal, every threat, it's all documented. And now it's in the hands of the SEC. The elevator dinged. Dawson and Elliot stepped out, followed by several board members. Father, Dawson said, his voice tight. It's over. The board has called an emergency session. A vote of no confidence, Elliot added, looking far too pleased. Effective immediately. Security guards that had been backing Corey suddenly shifted, moving to stand beside Elliot instead. I saw the moment Corey realized he'd lost control. You planned this, he snarled at me. All of it. Actually, you did. I stepped closer. The moment you decided to threaten my mother, you gave me everything I needed. The board might have overlooked financial misconduct, but witness intimidation. That's a step too far. My phone buzzed. Peyton. Your mom's safe at the lake house. She says to give them hell. Isabella. Prudence emerged from another elevator, looking shaken. The family reputation will survive, Elliot cut in. Under new management, the board has already approved my temporary appointment as CEO, with Isabella as executive director. You're working together. Dawson looked between us, betrayal written across his face. Someone had to clean up this mess, Elliot shrugged. And Isabella here has proven she knows how to get things done. The lobby was filling with security personnel and executives. Phones were ringing everywhere. Through the glass doors, I could see news vans pulling up. Mr. Patterson, a stern-looking woman in a dark suit approached. I'm with the Securities and Exchange Commission. We need you to come with us. Corey turned to Dawson. Son, you can't let this happen. But Dawson stepped back, shaking his head. You threatened her mother, her family. What did you expect? Dawson, I said softly. I never wanted it to end like this. Didn't you? He met my eyes. Was any of it real? All of it. That's what makes this so hard. The SEC agents were leading Corey away. He turned back one last time. You'll regret this. All of you. No, I replied. I'll be too busy saving your company to regret anything. As the chaos unfolded, Elliot pulled me aside. The press will want statements. We need to control the narrative. Already handled. I showed him my phone. James Morrison is holding a press conference in 10 minutes, announcing our partnership and the leadership transition. The stock will stabilize by market close. You really do think of everything. Had to. It was the only way to survive in this world. Prudence approached us, her usual composure cracking. What happens now? Now, I said. We rebuild. Properly this time. No shortcuts, no schemes, no threats. And my son. She glanced at Dawson, who stood alone by the windows watching the media circus outside. That's up to him. I felt my throat tighten. Some things can't be fixed with business deals. My phone buzzed again. A message from my mother. Remember what I taught you, baby? Sometimes winning costs more than losing. I looked around the lobby, at the empire I'd helped topple, at the man I loved but couldn't trust, at the future I'd fought so hard to secure. Victory tasted different than I'd imagined. Isabella, Dawson called out. He walked over, stopping just out of reach. I need to know something. If I had stood up to him at the wedding, would any of this have happened? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. No, I admitted. But you didn't. And here we are. Here we are, he echoed. Elliot cleared his throat. Press conference in 5. We should go. I nodded, turning away from Dawson, but his voice stopped me one last time. I'll be watching, he said. Show them what you can do. I straightened my shoulders, checked my reflection in the lobby windows. The cameras were waiting, the world was watching, and the real work was just beginning. Time to face the music, Elliot said. I smiled. No, time to change the tune. Together we pushed through the lobby doors into a storm of camera flashes. The next chapter was about to begin, and this time, I was writing it on my own terms. 3 weeks after Corey's arrest, I sat in my new office, staring at divorce papers. They'd arrived by courier that morning, Dawson's signature already in place. My coffee had gone cold as I watched the sun climb higher over the city skyline. A knock at the door broke my trance. Come in, Elliot entered, waving a tablet. Have you seen this? I didn't need to look. The headlines had been screaming all morning. Corey Patterson speaks out, the truth behind my downfall. He's claiming I seduced Dawson as part of an elaborate corporate espionage scheme, I said, keeping my voice steady. That I worked with competitors to orchestrate his downfall. That I'm a gold digger who just increased company profits by 40% in 3 weeks, Elliot interrupted. Nobody's buying his story. The society pages are. Since when do you care about... He spotted the papers on my desk. Dawson finally did it. Can't blame him. I destroyed his family. His father destroyed his family. You just exposed the rot. Elliot sat down across from me. But that's not why I'm here. We have a problem. My phone buzzed. Peyton. Turn on the news now. I grabbed the remote, flicking on the office TV. My blood ran cold. Breaking news, the anchor announced. Anonymous sources claim new executive director Isabella Patterson engaged in insider trading during the Morrison merger. The SEC has launched an investigation. That's impossible, I said. Every transaction was clean. I made sure. It's Corey, Elliot said. He's trying to drag you down with him. Another knock. This time it was James Morrison himself, looking grim. Tell me you have nothing to do with this, he demanded. James, you know me. Everything was by the book. Then explain this. He tossed a file on my desk. Inside were transaction records I'd never seen before, all bearing my digital signature. These are forged, I said, but my hands were shaking. I never... Prove it, James said. Fast, because right now, my board is pushing to dissolve our partnership. My phone rang, my mother. Baby, there are reporters at my house. They're asking about money transfers to offshore accounts in my name. The room started spinning. Elliot grabbed my arm, steadying me. He's thought of everything, I whispered. He's trying to make it look like you're exactly what he always said you were, Elliot finished. A con artist who married her way into power. James paced the office. I've got shareholders breathing down my neck. If we can't clear this up by end of day... Give me 3 hours, I cut in. I need to make a call. They left me alone. With trembling fingers, I dialed a number I'd hoped never to use. Prudence, I need your help. Silence on the line. Then, why should I help you? Because your husband isn't just coming after me. These forgeries, these fake accounts, they implicate Dawson too. Check his emails from this morning. I heard typing, then a sharp intake of breath. That bastard. He's willing to destroy his own son to get revenge. Help me stop him. Meet me at the house in an hour. Come alone. I grabbed my purse, but Elliot was waiting outside my office. You're not seriously going? It's the only way. It's a trap, he insisted. Let me come with you. No, but be ready with the press release we prepared. If I'm not back in 2 hours... Isabella. He grabbed my hand. Be careful. Corey might be in custody, but he's still dangerous. So am I. The drive to the Patterson mansion felt surreal. This was where I'd first dreamed of belonging, where I'd fallen in love with Dawson, where everything had started to unravel. Prudence opened the door before I could knock. In here. She led me to Corey's study. Everything was exactly as he'd left it, down to the half-empty whiskey glass on his desk. What am I looking for? Not what, she said. Who? The study door closed behind me. I spun around to find Dawson standing there. I'm sorry, he said softly, but we need to talk. The divorce papers weren't enough? This isn't about us. He moved to his father's computer, typed in a password. It's about stopping him before he destroys everything. Again. The screen lit up with emails, documents, a trail of breadcrumbs leading to the truth. He planned this failsafe months ago, Dawson explained. Set up accounts, forged signatures, created a paper trail. He knew someday someone would try to take him down. Why are you showing me this? Because, he met my eyes, despite everything, I still love you, and I won't let him destroy you too. My phone buzzed. Elliot, SEC agents are heading to the mansion. Get out now. But I didn't move, because on Corey's computer screen, I finally saw what I needed, the key to my salvation, and possibly to saving what mattered most. Dawson, I said, I need one more favor. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Time was running out. But for the first time in weeks, I felt hope. The game wasn't over yet. The annual shareholders' gala was in full swing when I walked into the grand ballroom, the same one where my wedding had imploded just weeks ago. This time I wasn't wearing white. My black dress was armor, my red lipstick war paint. Cutting it close, Elliot muttered, appearing beside me. The SEC is here. Good. I checked my phone. A message from Dawson. It's done. Files uploaded. The room hushed as James Morrison took the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, in light of recent allegations, the board has decided to hear the truth. I cut in, striding toward the podium. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Camera phones raised. Isabella, James warned, don't do anything. Rash? I smiled, plugging my laptop into the presentation system. Like exposing how Corey Patterson orchestrated his own downfall. The massive screens behind the stage lit up with emails, documents, surveillance footage. The audience gasped. 3 months ago, I announced, Corey created an elaborate scheme to frame me if I ever threatened his position. But he made one mistake. He used his own computer. Security footage played, showing Corey in his office late at night, creating the very documents he'd used to accuse me. The timestamps prove these forgeries were created months before the Morrison merger was even conceived, I continued. And the digital signatures, traced back to software purchased on Corey's personal credit card. James stepped forward, examining the evidence. These are genuine? Verified by 3 independent forensic analysts, Elliot confirmed, joining us on stage. The reports have already been sent to the SEC. The federal agents in the crowd were already on their phones, faces grim. But wait, I said. There's more. Another click, another document. This time, the crowd actually gasped. This is a recording of Corey ordering the fabrication of evidence against his own son, I explained. He was willing to destroy Dawson's career, his reputation, everything, just to get revenge on me. Prudence stood up from her table. You're lying. No, Mother, Dawson's voice rang out. He emerged from the crowd holding a USB drive. She's telling the truth. I found the original files myself. The room erupted in chaos. Reporters were shouting questions. Board members huddled in corners, whispering furiously. James, I turned to Morrison. Still want to dissolve our partnership?" He laughed, shaking his head. "Kid, you're either the most brilliant or the craziest person I've ever met." Why not both? The SEC agents were approaching, but not for me. They headed straight for the back of the room, where Corey's lawyer was trying to slip out unnoticed. "Oh," I called after them, "you'll want to check his offshore accounts too. He's been helping Corey hide assets for years." Elliot raised an eyebrow. "How did you—" "No, please. I was a secretary, remember? I saw every document that crossed his desk." Dawson approached the stage, looking up at me. "You did it." "We did it," I corrected. "Thank you for trusting me one last time." "Isabella," he started, but I shook my head. "Don't. This doesn't change anything between us. Some bridges can't be rebuilt." My phone buzzed. "Peyton. Girl, you're trending. Shuck Corporate Cinderella Strikes is #1. The crowd was still in upheaval when James took the microphone. "In light of these revelations, the Morrison-Patterson merger will proceed as planned, under the current leadership." Applause broke out. I saw Elliot grinning, already working the room like the CEO he was born to be. "One more thing," I said, taking the mic. "To everyone who doubted whether a secretary could run a company, our stock price is up 60% since I took over. Any questions?" Silence. Then more applause, louder this time. As I stepped down from the stage, Prudence blocked my path. "You've won," she said quietly. "Are you happy now?" I looked at her, really looked at her. Behind the designer dress and perfect makeup, I saw something I'd never noticed before. Fear. Fear of change, of losing control, of becoming irrelevant. "This was never about winning," I told her. "It was about truth. About earning my place, not having it handed to me or taken away on someone else's whim." "And Dawson will always be the greatest casualty of his father's pride." I glanced at him across the room, our eyes meeting briefly. "Take care of him." I headed for the exit, but Dawson caught up to me by the doors. "The divorce papers," he said. "I'll have them withdrawn." "No." I touched his cheek one last time. "Let them stand. We both need a clean slate." "Isabella." "Goodbye, Dawson." Outside, the night air was cool on my skin. Peyton waited by my car, grinning. Ready to celebrate? I looked back at the ballroom, at the life I'd fought for and won, at the love I'd had to sacrifice along the way. "Actually," I said, "I think I'm ready to go home. Mom's making her famous lasagna." Because in the end, that's what all this was about. Not revenge, not power, but proving that a secretary's daughter could change the world without losing herself in the process. And I'd done exactly that. The morning sun streamed through my office windows as I signed the last document finalizing Corey's complete removal from the company. Elliot sat across from me, feet propped on my desk like he'd been doing it for years. "Stock hit another record high," he announced, scrolling through his phone. "The press is calling us the dream team of Wall Street." "Funny how things work out," I said, adding the paper to the done pile. My phone lit up, Peyton sending me a link to yet another article. "Corporate Cinderella, from Secretary to Savior." Below it was a message. "Your mum's crying happy tears again." A knock at the door made us both look up. James Morrison stood there, trademark grin on his face. "Hope I'm not interrupting the victory lap." "James," I stood to greet him. "What brings you downtown?" "Can't a man check on his best investment?" He dropped into a chair. "Though I did hear something interesting this morning. Seems Prudence is selling the mansion." Elliot sat up straight. "Moving in with Dawson?" "Actually," James said, "she's opening a women's business mentorship center. Said something about making amends for years of looking down on the wrong people." I couldn't help but smile. People can surprise you. "Speaking of surprises," Elliot pulled out an envelope. "The board unanimously approved your proposal. The Employee Education Fund is officially launched. With full scholarships for support staff who want to advance their careers," I added. "No more talented people stuck making coffee just because they can't afford night school." James nodded approvingly. "From secretary to CEO to fairy godmother. You've come a long way." "Not far enough," I said, pulling up a presentation on my laptop. "We need to talk about expanding the Morrison merger into European markets." "Always working," Elliot groaned. "Don't you ever rest?" Rest is for people who've achieved all their goals. I winked. I'm just getting started. Another knock. This time it was Dawson, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in months. Sorry to interrupt, he said. Just dropping off the last of the divorce papers. An awkward silence fell. Elliot and James exchanged glances. We should check on that thing, Elliot said, standing. The very important thing, James agreed, following him out. Alone with Dawson, I felt the familiar ache in my chest, fainter now but still there. You look good, he said. Happy. I am. I gestured to the chair across from me. How's the new venture? The tech startup's taking off. Turns out there's life outside the family business. He sat down. Mom asked about you. I heard about the mentorship center. Tell her. Tell her I'm proud of her. Tell her yourself. She'd love to have you speak at the opening. I raised an eyebrow. Really? People change, Isabella. Sometimes it just takes a massive wake-up call. He smiled sadly. I should know. My phone buzzed. My mother. Dinner tonight? Made your favorite dessert. You know? Dawson said, watching me text back. I never told you this, but that day at our wedding, when my father started his speech, for a split second I almost stood up, almost told him to stop. Why didn't you? Because I was afraid. Of him, of change, of losing everything I thought I needed. He stood up. But you weren't afraid. You showed me what real courage looks like. Dawson, let me finish. I'm not here to win you back. We both know too much has happened. But I wanted you to know. You didn't just save the company. You saved all of us. From ourselves. I felt tears threatening but held them back. Thank you. He headed for the door, then turned back. Oh, and Isabella, Dad asked about you. How is he? In prison. Teaching business classes to other inmates. Says he's finally learning what real leadership means. He shrugged. Like I said, people change. After he left, I walked to the windows, looking out at the city. My city now, in many ways. Elliot poked his head in. All clear? All clear. Good, because we have that meeting with the European investors in 10 minutes. I grabbed my tablet, straightened my jacket. Then let's not keep them waiting. Hey, he caught my arm. You okay? I thought about everything that had brought me here. The humiliation, the revenge, the victory, the loss. The price of power and the value of truth. You know what? I smiled. I really am. My phone buzzed one last time. Peyton had sent a photo of my mother's famous chocolate cake with the caption, "Ready when you are, boss lady." And I was ready. Ready to keep building, growing, changing the world one boardroom at a time. Ready to help others rise like I had. Ready to write the next chapter. Not as the corporate Cinderella, not as Dawson's ex-wife, not as Corey's nemesis, but simply as Isabella, the woman who had finally, completely become herself. Let's go, I told Elliot. We've got work to do. Because that's what powerful women do. We keep moving forward one step at a time, bringing others with us as we climb. And I was just getting started.